Hello everybody, it is I, Brian the Pirate, and in today's video we're going to be covering the announcement made yesterday by the game director Judd for Last Epoch. It has caused a bit of controversy, let us say. Unfortunately, there was the intent to answer questions that have been outstanding since previously announcing the expansion Orobyss with the PlayStation 5 announcement, and also the subsequent announcement from Crafton regarding AI. Many questions arose, people have been waiting, so clearly Judd thought now is the time to answer those questions. But unfortunately, those answers in some cases were a little bit nebulous, or at the very least ambiguous, and they've resulted in more questions arising, frustrating questions for some people. And of course, there was one particular part of the announcement that has really, done something nasty to the hornet's nest, and it's just people are upset. And I want to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the post. I'm going to cover like the main paragraphs, not the entire thing, because some of it's waffle, no offense, Judd. But yeah, go through the main points, give some of my speculation, opinion, thoughts, etc., and explain what the controversies exactly are and whatnot, and why they have arisen, and maybe give a wee bit of feedback at the same time. So let's begin with the first major paragraph, this one here. This is regarding the question, will Last Epoch Orobyss expansion be free for existing players? The answer is yes. Anyone on PC who owns Last Epoch before the launch of the Orobyss expansion will receive the expansion as a free update. New players and PlayStation 5 players will be purchasing Last Epoch, all of its seasonal content, and the Orobyss expansion as one updated purchase. Fantastic. The game, or the expansion, is going to be free. That's great news. Previously, EHG had made, let's say, a promise. I think it was back in like 5 years ago or something, back in the community Discord, saying like all future content will be free. Whether or not that is the actual reason it is going to continue to be free, I'm not so sure about. Whether they actually intended for all future content to continue to be free at this point, or because of those previous public statements, their hands are now tied and they have to make them free or risk mass refunds via Steam, for example, could be another. I suspect they actually want to charge for it. Now, to be clear, that is just speculation on my part. But the reason I suspect that is I think it would have been the better alternative to what we'll be discussing shortly about in the next paragraph. But before that, they also make a point of pointing out that if you are a new player or a PlayStation 5 player, you'll be paying for Last Epoch, all the seasonal content, and the Orobyss expansion. I'm not 100% sure what that means. Like, that the paragraph could have ended there if all they're trying to say is, yes, the expansion is going to be free. But they made a point of adding this. So does that mean there's going to be an update to the price because new players are going to get all of the updated content all at the same time? I'm like, are you grandfathered in for the next expansion if you buy this one, if you're a new player, and so on and so forth? Like, what does this mean? Has it just added needless confusion? I don't know. I could be reading too much into it, but who knows? That, nonetheless, is one of the points about these announcements that have frustrated players, that people are getting ambiguous like information. So the next paragraph, this is the major one. This is the one that's really stirred things up and irked a substantial amount of the player base. Alongside the free expansion content, I'm excited to announce that we're introducing something genuinely new to Last Epoch, a fully alternate playable class built on systems that work differently from anything else in the game. We're calling this new category Paradox classes, and the first one will debut alongside the upcoming expansion as paid DLC for players who want to explore new playstyles. These classes will let us experiment in new and innovative ways, and we'll have plenty to share as we get closer to release. I think that's a terrible idea. There's a number of reasons why I think it's a terrible idea. One, Last Epoch is a live service action RPG, a systems-based action RPG. So it's systems upon systems upon systems. There's 5 classes, all with like subclasses. Then there's the hundreds of skills and the passives that are involved. There's hundreds, thousands maybe of items involved. There's all the other mechanics, all the systems, as I mentioned. It is a balancing nightmare. And whilst I believe every developer ever for the the most part at least, have all the best intentions of making their games as balanced as possible. We as ARPG gamers know that ARPGs are impossible to balance. You can try and get them as good as you can get them, but they are never fully balanced, especially when it comes to the release of new classes. It's almost always a certainty that the new class, in the vast majority of instances, in my experience at least, they end up overpowered initially. So now there's a concern that this is going to be pay to win. Now, EHG have made a frequently asked questions post on Reddit, where one of the questions is, will the classes be pay to win? And they answered, no, we intend to balance the classes as best as possible. And I do genuinely believe that. I am taking that statement in good faith. I just know they can't do it. And that's not me being, or casting aspersions or being like negative towards EHD. It's an action RPG. I know it can't be done. We've literally got decades and decades worth of experience as players, as developers, as gamers. We know it just doesn't work that way. And that means that whenever a paradox class is overpowered in comparison to non-paid classes, it will be perceived, whether the intention was to make it stronger or not, as pay to win, painting a target on the developer's back, opening up to dickheads who want to send them death threats and abuse, which don't do, by the way. If you're the sort of person who does that, you know, don't, because that's a really moronic thing to do. I genuinely believe they want to do something that's good for the game, but unfortunately, paid classes that are not going to always be balanced in a game that has to have meta shakeups on occasions. So you're going to want to make them slightly stronger one season and maybe weaker the next, and that people are going to be complaining that it's pay to win one moment and then complaining that the thing they paid for is too weak the next. And it's basically going to be a PR minefield, let's say. Now, as I alluded to before, I suspect they didn't want to make these classes paid and probably wanted to just go with charging for the expansion. That way you're only paywalling campaign content and such, whereas you still have access to mechanics. That would be my theory, because that frankly would just go down far better with most of the player base. I've literally seen quite a few comments that have alluded to that, going, why don't you just charge for the expansion instead of just for classes? I suspect their hands are tied, as I mentioned earlier, and that they can't do that, or otherwise they're going to have just people mass refunding for breaking whatever promise they made several years ago. So my advice would be to just go ham on the cosmetics, because let's be honest, EHG, no offense, but your cosmetics are not great. They look dated. They look like they have been made several years ago and have been waiting in a folder somewhere, and then you release the game into 1.0 and you're like, yo, we've got these, we could use them as cosmetics. And not many people are buying them because they look bad. I'm sorry. So maybe getting some artists who are really good at making fancy looking shit, hiring a bunch of those and getting them to really like make cool and awesome supporter packs as well. Like the supporter packs are a little bit lackluster. I think the pricing of your cosmetics are very reasonable, but I still don't want to buy them because they don't look appealing. And we already have precedent that people are prepared to pay an obscene amount of money for cosmetics. Look at literally every other single live service game ever. Look at a close competitor, Path of Exile. People literally drop $480 every quarter. As it stands, the current choice they've made to paywall classes is going to lead to speculations of pay to win, accusations of pay to win, whether rightly or wrongly. And some of you may be wondering, Brian, there's no PvP in this game. Why do people think it's going to be pay to win? Some of you may also be wondering, like, Brian, there's no PvP in Last Epoch. How on earth can it be pay to win? Well, you don't need PvP in a game for there to be a competitive aspect, for it to be pay to win. You can just have certain mechanics that lead to players competing with each other one way or another. In the case of Last Epoch, there's community race events, there's EHG-driven race events. There is a player-driven economy in the game. So if you've got a more powerful class that's behind a paywall, you can literally pay for power to get an advantage in getting more currency, items, etc., in the economy, or getting there faster, to get into harder content faster. That subsequently leads to better drop rates and such things like that. So that's the main big scary elephant in the room. The next few paragraphs allude to the future of the game. A little bit ambiguous again, unfortunately, though. They have stated that 2 more seasons are planned. Season 4 is slated for early 2026. When is that, though? January, February, March? That's all technically early 2026. People are now confused if they're sticking to the quarterly updates or every like 3 to 4 months. We'll get the new season 1 mechanic with several highly requested updates. We'll start sharing teasers and firm release dates soon. TM, keep an eye on our streams and social channels. Also subject to change, which tickled me a little bit. That is actually answered in the FAQ post on Reddit as well. What is that supposed to mean? And it means that potentially there could be a delay to the expansion, and there may be a 6th season or season 6 prior to Orobyss coming out. Or it could go the other ways, and for some reason they change everything altogether and they're going to charge it and do something completely from left field that we don't know about. Who knows? The intent, at least, is that there's going to be at least 2 more seasons with free content prior to the free expansion, unless you're buying the game brand new, where there may or may not be a price hike. Who knows? It's, again, lots of questions are coming out, like when, what, how much, why, oh, what planet is this, you know? I really hope that moving forward, when Judd makes these posts, he doesn't make them until they're actually ready to make them. And what I mean by this is that I'm sure they believed they were ready to answer these questions, but because of the ambiguity, it again has led to frustrations, to more questions being answered, questions that they can't answer now, and we're going to have to subsequently wait for weeks, months, maybe, who knows, until we actually get answers to those questions. I think it is in EHG's interest to only answer these questions as and when they're ready, as they've got backup answers to any follow-up questions, things like that, or just make a hugely concise and definitive post. Yes, things are going to be free forever and always. IDST, kisses. Yes, you're going to get 2 more seasons for sure. When we do the Orobyss expansion, there will be a paid class. This is what all the paid class does. This is why it's paid. This is what it means for the base classes and any future base classes. This is the new content you're going to be getting, etc. Rather than going, something new's coming. We can't tell you about it though. Bye, kind of thing. Because it again just leads to frustration. The paragraphs thereafter are mostly about how they are hiring up and going to continue pumping out content. They do address the AI first statement that was made by Krafton. Krafton is a big company, as a corporation, I suppose, have stated they are AI first. And I'm sure, like many of you, you probably sneered at that and was suddenly worried that Krafton had bought last Epoch or EHG. So the statement is also, there's been a lot of discussion around Krafton's recent comments about being AI first and what that might mean for EHG. To be clear, our development approach is not changing. We remain focused on building Last Epoch the same way we always have, with the same hands-on design philosophy. To support this, we are hiring across several disciplines, blah, 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 blah. Click here if you want to be an artist, a wizard, etc. I'm very glad to see that. I immediately asked in the creator Discord when Krafton made that statement, I was like, what does this mean for Last Epoch? Because as a content creator, as a amateur voice actor, as an artist, I have issue with AI to a degree. I'm not against AI. I'm not against AI as a tool being used to help things that are difficult to do less difficult. Where I draw the line, however, is when it replaces the creative process, where it makes the art, it makes the voices, etc. When it replaces the creators and the human aspect, that's when I call bullshit and it shouldn't be involved. So I'm glad that EHG, I mean, they haven't explicitly said it, to be fair. They may be using AI in some capacity. I don't know. I don't work for EHG. But at least what they're alluding to, or what can be inferred from this statement, is that they're not using generative AI to make, sound, music, art, etc. At least I hope that's the case, because if they are doing that, shame on you, EHG. So my final thoughts are, be more concise in the future, please, Judd, EHG, etc. Like, when you guys are in podcasts and you're talking about development, when you do your live streams and such, you are very transparent, you're very informative, and it's great. You're really good forward-facing customer, gamer, player-facing, whatever terminology you want to use, like people. I love that. But when you do these announcements, you end up causing anguish, upset, irksomeness for people because of the ambiguity. I know that people are hounding you for answers all the time, but I'm pretty sure it's like PR best practice to not say anything until you are 100% fully ready to say it, and to avoid these situations. I think the expansion being for free, either because their hands are tied or because they just genuinely want to fulfill that promise they made many moons ago, is fantastic. Really glad to see that. I still think the paid classes is a massive faux pas, a big mistake, and that they should be looking at other avenues to generate revenue instead. Mostly battle passes. People are okay with it nowadays. Loot boxes, cosmetics, really investing in getting really, really cool cosmetics in the shop, because the current offerings are poo, to say the least. I don't mean to sound horrible when I say that. Again, as a fellow creative, I never want to just put down someone's work, but it's just not appealing. I'm going to be honest, so work on that instead. Completely avoid the minefield that is trying to convince the player base that something is or isn't pay to win, and just be able to give access to everyone to whatever these paradox classes are. And yeah, cool. Thanks with the AI stuff, and not hopefully doing that, at least from what I could infer. What do you, viewers, gamers, fellow action RPG enjoyers, think at home? Was there anything in the announcement that you feel is good and you're happy about? Let's bring some positivity to this space. Is there anything that I haven't addressed that you think is absolutely terrible and needs to be explicitly stated? Or are you indifferent and you think it's all a mountain made out of a molehill? Who knows? Leave your comments in the comment section below. If you've liked the video or found it helpful, do please give it a like. It helps with the algorithm gods. And of course, whilst you're there, subscribe if you're not already, because I'm nearly at 1,000 and therefore would be able to get YouTube partnership, and because it would be just a nice thing to do. But that's going to be it from me. Thank you all very much for watching. Farewell. I'll remember you.